And hello, everyone, and welcome to this version of the Hospitality Marketing Live Show number 305. Actually, I just noticed, Adele, you kind of have a festive shirt as well with Dean's proverbial
Right?
tropical.
See, it's a thing. You didn't
It's
get the
Fun
memo?
Thing.
Friday.
I did not get the memo on the thing. Thank you. I stayed with the traditional brand boring polo of, guess what? If I don't have enough logos everywhere, why not one on my chest as well? First off, let us make acknowledgement to the fact that we are now, I've run out of channels to pick. We literally are on, we have always been on Facebook on 7 channels. We've been on Twitter. Tim Peter. Hey, Mr. Tim.
Hey,
I was just ready to pontificate on our distribution tactics recently.
Please do. Please do.
We are on Facebook, 7 different channels. We are on Twitter, 4 different channels. We are on YouTube, 4 different channels. We are on LinkedIn, 1 channel. Did I get all of those? Facebook. Okay, and now going into the good stuff. All my channels are now live. So we are on, if you want to watch us on TV live, you can go to Roku and actually find the Hospitality channel. You can go to Google Play on their Android for iOS, which is an app, and also their Play on their TV and get a Hospitality channel. You can also go to Amazon Prime and download and get a Hospitality channel. And you can also go to Apple TV and Apple iOS is an app as well. The Hospitality channel is located as an app on your phones and iPads as well as your TV. Also added to the list is YouTube channel. And also to the list is I've now simulcast us on Twitch. So we are showing up on your Xbox and PS stations. So no matter where you want to hide, we will find you. So I have any idea that I need your help with. Just real quick. If you're old enough to remember the MTV when they first started launching, they had a really cool commercial where they took a lot of artists and says, I want my MTV. So I am sending out, I'm going to send a link up from Video Appeal that you can record yourself, hopefully saying, I want my Hospitality channel. And I'm going to put it all together into some little cute cartoon commercials and send it out and see if we can go over and start getting people to sign up for the Hospitality channel. Because we actually, that's a subscription show. The show goes live for free every time we go live. It goes live from Friday, so you can watch it on TV. But it's a paid channel, just like Netflix or anything else is, for $4.99 a month, which I have codes for people if they're interested, just to try it out and see if you like it. But we also have a TV channel that's linear, which, Tim, I have to talk to you about as well, that is has all of our old episodes playing. It 5 o'clock is this, 2 o'clock is this. And I'm setting up separate channels for all of us for all of our podcasts. So all of the podcasts will have their own channel. If you just want to get 24/7, can't get me enough Tim Peter, boom, I got a solution for that.
Which let me tell you, my college roommate used to say a little Tim goes a long way. So that's not a selling feature right there, Laura.
Hey, I found myself just last night thinking I need a little more Tim in my life.
You know what? You know what this song needs is a little bit more Tim.
I actually found myself this week writing a response to something on social media and then rephrasing it, thinking, what would Tim do?
Oh my goodness. You guys are just doing this because I was able to join today.
You always disagree in the most generous way.
She's been infected. She's been infected. It's like a virus.
I'm not sure if I'm liking her in this conversation.
I don't know if that's really the right direction for that, but
I am apparently COVID-21.
New and improved.
New and improved. That's exactly.
But can you really be new and improved?
Yeah, well, apparently there is a way of doing it, I guess. But yeah, I just thought with everything's going on, we actually have the first, and I did go through all the platforms. We're the first and only 24/7 dedicated hospitality TV channel ever made. There are, if you look up hospitality and all the platforms, you'll find some things like some hardware company that has a channel for its hardware to play TV channels in their hotels. There's that. There's the movie Hospitality. Carrie's having a problem with Safari, but thank you for jumping over.
I always have a problem with Safari. I use Chrome. So I use Safari as my primary browser, and I use Chrome to join the show because when I do it in Safari, it works not as well as you might like. So
yeah. We need to get Carrie in here to talk about our topic of the day when we get to that. By the way, he's
is Kerry the one? Hold on, I'm just going to.
He's the guy
while we're doing it. And this is a throwout topic because it came up in Clubhouse so much this past week. I threw it out at the end of last week saying, "Hey, we'll talk about this next week," which was cybersecurity, hospitality cybersecurity, and it freaking turned on to fire. It was like everybody and their brother had an opinion and aspect about it. And Dean was kind enough to actually get somebody that knows what the hell they're talking about.
It's a good idea.
Hey, opinions are great. Validation's even better. Hey, Kerry.
Morning.
Welcome.
Morning, Kerry.
Sorry you had problems with the Safari program. Here I am boasting our distribution worldwide, and you're saying, not Safari.
Well, in Safari, all the little squares were just flashing. There was no sound. I could chat, but that was all that was working. So.
Considering how I look on camera, that could have been a filter that was applied because of me.
I was feeling kind of that way this morning, too. I'm on the West Coast. It's a little earlier than I'm usually sitting in front of a camera. But
So, Kerry, Dean knows you. I don't know you. I don't know if Adela or Tim do as well. But
ironically, Dean and I met here when he was living in Los Angeles, and he is now living in Norfolk, Nebraska, which is a little town in the middle of nowhere where I grew up.
So you guys like swapped, like, hey, I'll go back where you live, and you stay where I live. Okay.
Well, I hadn't lived there for many years before I even got to LA, but yeah, kind of.
Dean was the player to be named later.
Is that like a Nebraska rule? If you leave a small town, you have to send your replacement. Is that a thing?
Yeah, because otherwise they'd run out of bodies. So.
They have to change the little signs for the little towns. Population 88. They don't want to make an 87 sign.
Right.
Exactly. It's like a tag team thing.
The town he's in has a unique designation. It is called a micropolitan area because it's a hub for a ton of little towns around it. So people drive basically 100 miles in almost every direction to go in for shopping, and it's got the Target. It's got Starbucks.
To go to Walmart.
Yeah, it's got Walmart. It's got everything that it's got a shocking lot. I mean, they have a really good wine store. I mean, they've kind of got everything you would want.
So you're saying that Dean, when he says he's in the metropolitan hub of Nebraska, he's not joking. It really is the metropolitan hub of Nebraska.
Micropolitan.
I'm in the micro.
Micro. See, Dean, you never added the micro to the conversation. You just said I'm in that place in Nebraska.
I usually just say I'm in Nebraska and I leave it at that.
Is that like when you travel abroad and people are like, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, Cape Coral, Florida." Florida, Miami? Yeah, okay, sure. Already their geography is better than most people I come across because I can do the same thing in Georgia going, Florida? Yeah, just south? Never mind. That was a pick on them. Anyway, Kerry, a little bit about yourself, and thank you for jumping in with us and giving us some credence to the content today.
Well, here's hoping. I got my start in the hospitality industry when I was in college. I needed a part-time job just to pay the bills, and started working in the call center at Radisson Hotels way back in the day. And then I just kind of stuck with it. I graduated with a degree that didn't have anything to do with hospitality, but I just kept finding jobs that were each one paid a little better, so I stuck around. I worked for Design Hotels for a little while when they were headquartered in the Bay Area, and then came down to Los Angeles. Worked for a couple of little independent hotel groups, and the latest was Lux Collection, which I think at their peak, they have like 100 and some hotels worldwide. Still own and operate a couple of hotels here in LA under the brand name Lux. And I was Senior VP of Development and Operations. So COVID comes around and the company just decided to completely restructure. They got rid of the collection part, which meant all the employees were kind of up in the air, myself included, and a couple C-suite and VP level people were gone. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do? Because COVID had just hit. Every hotel company in the world had a hiring freeze. There was nothing I was going to do for several months. So I jumped into cybersecurity with both feet, and I enrolled in a program that was designed by the Israeli Defense Department, and they turned it into an in-person class, which because of COVID became an online class. And so instead of going to Cal State Long Beach to learn, I attended Zoom University, as I like to call it. And it was a pretty intense year. I mean, it was 11 hours a week, just sitting here with professors and students doing experiments and learning more than I wanted to, enough to frighten anyone, if that's what you need me to do. And I feel like I come at it with a unique perspective because I've got a really good grasp and understanding of how the hospitality industry works, and especially on the technical and reservation side of it. Like I helped design a new booking engine in the early 2000s. I've kind of, worked with a number of providers such as TravelClick and Sabre and some of the little players in that field as well. And so I kind of understand the way all those systems work. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, doing some consulting work and hoping one of the big guys wants me to help them with their B2B sales, I guess, for lack of a better term. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that time. I mean, it was a good way to spend a pandemic if you can't really go anywhere anyway. And I learned a lot, and it gave me, a reason to be showered and ready by the time class started.
Gary, I come from an independent hotel collection, not affiliated with any kind of a brand. And, from that perspective, like we were just hotel people. We don't know anything about cyber security and all of this is just completely foreign to our business. But now it seems like suddenly we need to become experts at something that is just so far from our wheelhouse. I mean, it was no problem learning about internet marketing because we were entrepreneurial and needed to do what we needed to do. But this just seems like another planet from our expertise.
I like to say that everything is sales. Everything. You go for a job interview, you're selling yourself. These hackers are basically selling you a story and they want you to click on a link. So you just have to be good at marketing and sales and be able to read through the weeds and go, oh, this is a phishing email. I'm not going to click on that link. And so just it's all sales and they're selling a trap, basically.
Well, that makes it sound like it's more about communication and education. How do we make our employees really understand the difference between an authentic email and something that is sounding fake? It can sound really, I mean, I've seen so many myself. I've avoided so many myself. And
at my last company, somebody had basically taken an email address of the CEO who had hired and was good friends with one of our sales reps outside of the country and sent an email saying, I need you to transfer XYZ thousands of dollars to this account. And ironically, there was some travel that just coincidentally was happening around that time. And she did it. And it was really bad because he had no idea. And I think what they did is they took like the URL of the email address and changed it by one letter so you really wouldn't notice. And so we just have a policy that anything that comes from anyone that has anything to do with money, there has to be a phone call. You have to talk to the person that sent it or somebody else in the company or talk to finance something before you do that.
Well, I mean, that hits on, the hopeful obvious ones. Obviously, it's not obvious, but, the ones that are kind of a short circuit to an immediate gratification, like send money or get money or send something or give password. That's a pretty first step. Like, well, I got your attention. Give me what I want so that you don't figure this out too quickly. It's the slow burn stuff, the innocuous stuff of general dialogue and or consumable emails or what, just pick on emails for right now, that are the ones I'm most worried about, because that's the hardest to train people on is those they're not asking for anything eminently other than engagement. And that engagement solicits the fracture that creates the problem initially. How because I mean, I'm dealing with a client that I'm literally taking a software piece that I've been using that I bought on a platform called AppSumo, go figure, that helps with threat analysis. And it teaches and educates people by literally then putting it into their SMTP and then using it to facilitate training for everyone. Where it sends out phishing and it sends out spam, ransomware stuff and triggers to show what they did wrong so they can relearn what they need to do next time.
Right.
That's the hard stuff.
Lauren, I have a question for you. How do you know that app itself is not actually?
You're right. It could be, hey, well, let's do a double figure on them because there's triple layer ransomware now. It's like I'm like, wait, what? Yeah, it is true.
I'll be the first person.
I
was just going to be raising my hand. I'll be the first person to admit. Back in the 90s, I'm working with this company, And it was back in the day of the love letter virus, if anybody remembers that.
Oh God, yeah.
And so there's this email that came out, which looked like some guy had sent an email to a love interest of his with an attachment, a love letter attachment on it. And it looks like he sent it to the whole company. And so you get this email and your thought is, holy crap, this idiot sent this out to everybody. And so then you're like, I got to see what he said. Oh, you've just been suckered.
Mhm.
And I'll raise my hand. I did it.
Yeah.
So-
Oh, I was going to say, I've been doing a lot of research, and I've kind of got a list of about 30 or so companies that provide cybersecurity services in the hospitality space, and I know they're legitimate, so I could share that with you later if you
Oh,
want.
that's fine. I mean, I'll tell you exactly what it is. Where is it? Podcast 304. Where are we? I use Threat Cop. It's similar to Simulate, CYMulate, and
Okay.
it's and yes, you're absolutely right, Tim, because you look at it and go, yeah, this could be just a double up.
I
Bogus,
mean, Threat Cop,
thing,
that doesn't sound like a thing that could be real, but
lot
could
of-
be.
a
And I
lot
don't
of
know the
it-
first thing about
No,
it. I wanna be
it-
very fair. I'm having a little fun at your
They're
expense.
smart. No, there's smart people that run systems that have gotten duped, and oil lines go down, and meat doesn't get produced, and things like. They're not
I
dumb.
mean-
I mean, that's the thing.
I thought there was an interesting story this week that has nothing to do with hospitality, but this is just a setup to a question for Carrie. But about the criminals who were using this secure messaging app that now this is hacking going the other way around, right? But this was actually a sting by the FBI. The app was actually not encrypted. And so the criminals were telling all the things that they were doing. And it was something that the FBI was actually able to see everything they were doing, which is a good thing. They were able to take a whole bunch of terrible people off the streets and a whole bunch of drugs and things like that. Carrie, the question I have is, now that you've been spending some time looking at this, what is the thing that, you mentioned people not clicking on links and being aware of phishing and the like, but what are the vulnerabilities that people should be conscious about? Like, what are the things that they need to be thinking about if they're not already?
Well, one thing I found that, people are very resistant to change and to update your Windows operating system and update Mac when it prompts you that there's a new operating system, and your iPhone or your Android phone or whatever. Always do it. I mean, I think if it's a major upgrade like Mac OS, they actually continue with security patches for a couple of years after they switch. So that's a little safer to wait on. But if it's a security patch or a middle of the thing patch and then Windows patches, now 99% of them are perfect. Every now and then there's one that may cause you a problem, but they tend to send out a fix within a few days. I just say update whatever system you're using as frequently as the manufacturer sends you out an update, and just do it. I think a lot of the hacking and ransomware and things like that happen, or people just getting into systems, is because there's literally like an old Windows NT system plugged in doing one critical piece of something. And that's the really scary part, is a lot of our critical infrastructure needs to be upgraded. A lot of the water systems and all that, they're using a program that was designed in the late 90s that does the job, and it's going to cost a lot of money to upgrade and fix it. So they just keep using it. Well, there's nobody maintaining that anymore. And it's easy enough if the criminal figures it out. I mean, they were saying on the news the other day that bad actors in other countries could literally take down our entire power grid.
Yeah.
And
It's interesting in the hospitality space that we've got all of this data that changes hands, going from an OTA to a hotel. We all talk about PCI compliance and all those things that has to be in place in order to exchange data. And yet, in spite of that, every major hotel chain out there has been hit. We hear about a Hilton or a Marriott, and I'm not picking on anybody, it's just reality, that 33 million credit cards and guest names were exposed.
Right.
What did they do wrong?
Oh, I have read many articles about it, and I can't tell you exactly because they're not exactly forthcoming with exactly what happened. Most of them are not. But a lot of it, this is the way I see it. Every system out there is only as secure as the least secure website that an employee visits while they're on that network. While I was in this class, one of the examples we were given was a hacker was kind of trying to figure out what this guy was doing and observed that he went to this certain bowling alley after work 3 days a week or 2 days a week or whatever. And she went to that bowling alley's website and realized that it didn't even have HTTPS on it, and it wasn't secure, and it was really out of date. So she basically infected the bowling alley's website. And when the guy went to book lanes for himself and his friends, suddenly she's on his work computer.
Yep.
And then the next day, excuse me, he had the computer at home. Then when he went back to work the next day and plugged into the network she was on. I mean, you know, she didn't have admin access right away, but she had a doorway from which she could experiment. And then suddenly she's in that system. And a lot of companies, I mean, that's it. You're only as secure as the least secure website and employee visits.
So we found something interesting with one client, one hotel, that just bears to the fact of how easy this can be. They went over and had new wiring put in for their networks. And of course, they had back of the house network, front of the house network. And in the one business area, their workstation area in the common area, they had done a dual plug because the contractor did what he was told, which was wherever there's outlets, do this. And so he had dual plugs, and innocently they plugged in the business computer to the back of the house networking plug, not the one below it that should have been put into it. And this was found out not because of a security check, but through a question and answer with the team. When they get into a pinch and they didn't have enough terminals, or a person that had ADA compliance needed to be checked in and they need a lower table that was lower than the one they had, they knew to go over to this computer because it was logged into their system. And it was like, so you're literally making the public available. Should they know that was connected, they could literally go onto your in back of the house system from a public, you know, a computer that was actually given for public usage. And it was just one of these things. They didn't think about it. It wasn't, you know, not to wag fingers at anybody. They just didn't think that that was a problem. It just seemed like a neat convenience, you know. Anyway,
is it like Google Sidewalk? My
Amazon Sidewalk, but yes, yeah, it's Amazon, yeah.
My husband just said, "There's no way we're getting on that thing. We don't know enough about it. It sounds risky. Where you're using all your neighbors."
All my equipment for my Ring is close enough to my own router. I don't need it to be shared with another router, and I don't use the tiles to think that if I could drive around, the people can't find my stuff.
So just a quick update quick background for those who haven't heard of it. Amazon Sidewalk is a new feature that they have introduced in Echoes. They have introduced it in Ring devices, etc., that allow a very limited portion of bandwidth to be shared in what is called a mesh network that allows lots of folks to connect basically anywhere. What they're doing is they're creating universal ubiquitous internet access, because they're using all of these things as public routers that anyone can attach to, no matter where they are. Real quick, I think it's a brilliant idea conceptually. I think it's very, very smart to make the network available to lots and lots of folks. That's not a bad thing, and it's not a bad intent. I think the fact that they turned it on as opt out as opposed to opt in makes sense from the perspective of, if you make it opt in, the likelihood that people will do it is very, very low. If you make it opt out, the likelihood that people will do that is very, very low. And I think it needs to be communicated much more aggressively than what they've done. You know, Amazon, generally speaking, has a pretty good reputation for these things and does a pretty good job of this, generally speaking. But you guys know I'm very fond of saying, when you build the ship, you build the shipwreck. So, you know, there's certainly this opportunity here for people to do some maybe not so good things. And, you know, I think Amazon probably should communicate that better and be able to demonstrate more effectively that it's actually safe and secure for your own network before
Well, Xfinity's been doing it for a while too. If you have an Xfinity, they shared your ability to have the public availability of Wi-Fi in the area with your router. And you wonder to that end, how secure was that? But then again, they're the same people that leave admin as their username and the password that was defaulted to their router on it. And people wonder why they get hacked. It's like, well, you might have changed that first. But
there's a funny term, and I am usually very G-rated on this show, so I apologize in advance. We're going to be R-rated for a second, or at least PG. We're at least PG-13. You know,
we're on TV now.
The one drop, but there is a group of people who criticize the Internet of Things very, very vocally. because Internet of Things, IoT, is not well regulated, is not well understood in terms of how secure these devices are. And so they refer to it. And I do think it's a good framing device. When in doubt, they refer to it not as IoT, but iOS. And the S in this case is not Internet of Things, but Internet of Shit. And so, if you're thinking about these devices not as Internet of Things, but Internet of Stuff instead, it's not a bad way to frame how you approach it. I got this new device and I'm going to plug it in, and I'm going to connect it to my network. And what am I actually connecting to my network? It doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that they haven't thought about security. It means you should be thinking about, have they thought about it? I mean, Kerry, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, two things. So back about Amazon Sidewalk, I immediately turn that off, and you can find it in settings on the Amazon app on your phone if you have any Amazon products. As far as sharing the bandwidth, one solution to that is if you don't rent the wireless router from your provider and get your own, then you've got more control over that. What was the other thing? Oh, Internet of Things. So two things I want to say about that. One, most routers, when you set it up, you've got your normal network, and then you can set up a guest network. So it's a subnet. So what they recommend is put your smart TV and your Alexas and your smart thermostat and just smart light bulbs on the guest network. And that way, if someone does hack into it, they're not on the network where your laptops and tablets are. And that protects you nicely. The other thing, a moment of self-promotion, if I may.
Welcome to the show, Kerry.
Come on in, Kerry.
The water's fine. That's what we do here.
I started a website many years ago for a different purpose, and I just kept the URL because I liked it, hotelpaparazzi.com, because I figured cybersecurity is an invasion of privacy, and I just stuck with it. So anyway, I transitioned it from a consulting site to cybersecurity news for the hospitality industry. And those articles, I've got a bunch of Google alerts set up. I have a couple other services that just comb Twitter and other things for articles about that. I'm lucky if I get 2 good articles a week, because just not a lot is written that is specifically for our industry. And the thing is, a lot of the general stuff applies to our industry, but I'm trying to focus it only on things that talk about that. And an interesting article that came up, well, it pops up regularly anyway, I think because it's so relevant, but it was probably written in 2019. And it said, basically, the bad actors are lurking in the curtain rod, because hotels that have smart curtains and smart blinds that they can electronically open and close during the right time of day when there's no guest in the room, to help regulate the energy, a lot of those, that's where the actor comes in. Anybody can check into a hotel room with a laptop, and if they know what they're doing and they're persistent and the hotel isn't well protected, they can get into the property management system or the frequent guest system or whatever they want to and get that information if it isn't all locked down. And like you said, if the guest Wi-Fi happens to have an interface into the back office Wi-Fi or back office network, then you're really in trouble.
There's an old
good idea, basically.
There's an old methodology I've used for years from a project management perspective. Cybersecurity is not my area of expertise. That's why I'm trying to ask more questions than answers at this point. At the same time, there's an old project management methodology that I've used for years that I'm a big fan of, that is just a risk matrix where you assess the risks to anything you're doing as what is the likelihood of this occurring, high, medium, low? What is the impact to your business if this occurs, high, medium, low? And obviously you start with the high and say, okay, these are the things we need to focus on first. And then you work your way down. And any risks in those high categories or mid-high categories, you have to eliminate or you have to mitigate, And so thinking about, Kerry, you make a great point about, do the automated blinds need to be hooked to the PMS? Is that a real advantage? What's the upside versus the downside? What's the impact if that happens? What's the likelihood if that happens? And are you thinking through, how to address this? I don't know that model works perfectly, but it may not be a bad place for people to think about, what are the potential impacts here? What is the potential likelihood of this? And are we thinking this through, right?
Tim, who was the guy? And I'm sorry if I remember the revenue manager from MGM back in the day. Super athletic, brilliant revenue manager. He was telling stories about where they had a cyber break into the casino.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name. Anyway,
yeah, I'm blanking as well.
Yeah, he gave a great story, Carrie.
Was it Michael something?
I thought it was Kerry, but I could be.
Yeah,
I could be.
Yeah,
I could have been primed by Kerry.
Yeah, they got hacked by their fish tank. Their automated fish tank.
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they got into the system because they were. Yep, the auto feeder, and how they got into the system via that because it was connected to their back of the house system and it was not secure, and somebody figured that out and so forth and so on. But yeah, he told that story about how much chaos that created as well from it. But it's amazing. First off, the hackers are always creatively ahead of the results that we're finding from it, and lots of senses to it. So, and that to that end, I wanted to ask you, I was like, when people approach you about what you do and how you do it, again, self-promoting is good. Are more people likely to be asking you because they are now in trouble? Or how many of them are proactively saying, man, before this gets where I'm on the news, what do I do to make sure that I can avoid these things from happening? I mean, how much proportion to each side of the conversation do they come to you with?
Well, I would say a lot more has happened. It's mostly people wanting to do something preventative. I'll be honest, nobody has approached me because they've been attacked. I might take one back, but it wasn't anything life altering. It was like a minor little thing. But for the most of them, it's just everything's been in the news lately. But something that even before that was everybody transitioned to working from home in the last year. And so a lot of it is, I hadn't really thought about my employee having their laptop at home, or I, as an employee, what do I need to do because my company hasn't been real clear, things like that. So a lot of it is, like I said, make sure you update everything, turn on your firewalls, turn on your antivirus, make sure all of that is up to date. Make sure you've got login and password on your router. Make sure you've got, that's not just admin. Make sure that your Wi-Fi password is complicated enough that the neighbors aren't going to jump on it. Make sure that you're, if you're capable or if your router will allow it, and you can set up a separate guest network. That's basically a subnet, so it's separated. Set that up, or if you have a more advanced one and you know enough and want to create a subnetwork just for your Internet of Things, do that. Make sure all of your Internet of Things have a complicated login and password. Blah 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 blah. And here's the other thing. Another thing on your laptop, if you're using it for anything mission critical, make sure that you're not just. And we all do this. You set it up the first time and you log in, and you've got full administrative access to your entire laptop. What you can do is set up a separate user, so you've got the admin user and with a super complicated password, and then the user that's going to be you as a separate user. And then that way, if someone does hack, they're not going to get into admin. They won't be able to get into your network necessarily, or it creates an extra step. And it's also an extra step for you because let's say you need to resize or redo something in the settings, and that's admin only. Some of them you can log in right while you're there. Others you're going to have to change profiles and then jump back, and it's all painful. That's the other part.
It is, yeah. And the reason why I even brought this up in topic for our Clubhouse conversation this past week was because I got my annual bill for my cybersecurity insurance, which being what I do and so forth, I have cybersecurity insurance. And after crawling up, getting my jaw off the floor for the 34% plus rate increase on it, said, gee, let me go back to my agent and see, is this the best that we can get, so forth. And out of some things I learned that by my quick checkboxing back in the years, I've been having it for several years, they thought I was doing more confidential data than I really was, handling account data and asset management data where I had control over values for clients that I didn't have just simply because I said, oh yeah, I do due diligence. Click, I handle assets. No. I do marketing due diligence. Clarify that one.
Right.
Anyway, but I was going back and forth with it. And before they said, do you have a written policy for your passwords, encryption codes? Yes, I do. Great. Send a copy. Oh, that's different than just saying yes, isn't it?
You just spend a few minutes on Microsoft Word coming up with one.
Got to write something down. But that's what I was. Go ahead, Adele.
What should our password policy be?
I use, well, there's two schools of thought on that. So I use a password manager and find, 1Password, they've all actually been hacked at some point,
Yeah.
but I would rather work with somebody who's been hacked once and learned from it and changed it than someone who's never been hacked before. Because it makes me wonder, why haven't they been hacked before? They must be, maybe, I don't know. Maybe they're just that good. But I use NordPass, which with NordVPN. There's also, there's a ton of them out there. LastPass, 1Password, blah, blah, blah. And they will let you do a little slider to make them more complicated. So when in the password field, it'll say 8 characters, 12 characters, 20 characters, whatever. I slide it up to as many characters as it allows. Each, I think something like over, just to guess passwords, the fastest computer right now is going to take something like a quadrillion years to figure out like a 20 character password. Yeah. Like it would just doing all combinations.
Well, there's a scale or something, there's a site that actually tells you how fast based on the number of character positions you have. A computer will do it, and anything less than 10 is like in the matter of seconds. It's not even.
It can be. Yeah. Well, and the other thing, so use complicated passwords, but also another school of thought is don't worry about passwords. Come up with sentences and type a sentence that because that's going to be just as hard, if not harder, because that'll be longer, but you can actually remember it.
Yes.
And
I use a sentence, but then I just use the first letter
of the sentence.
Of each word in the sentence.
Telling us this.
And then I add a plus in the sentence to it. A little
so Adele Gutman
it's not actually,
awesome.
I'm not telling my password, but it's just a system for people to remember. It's just like saying put in a sentence, but in a sentence can be intuitive. When you started the first 3 words, if you know the first 3 words, you can figure out the rest of the sentence sometimes. But if you only are using the first letters of the sentence in your head, they can't.
I have an extra layer to that, Carrie. On my 1Password, I have so much crap passwords that I've yet to clean out that even if somebody hacked my 1Password, they won't find the right one because I can't find the right one.
Right.
I got 15 versions of the.
But
so security by obscurity, Lauren, is that what you're saying?
That's my motto.
That is not a good system, man. Not a good system.
No, my password manager has become old-fashioned. It's a piece of paper. This is not the one, but it's a piece of paper.
It was like everybody's screenshotting right now.
But I actually write them down on paper, which back in the day they told you never write down your passwords because somebody breaks into your house and they got all that stuff. Well, I've got a very loud dog that many of you have met in the past on the show. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I'm okay with that. So I can write these down and have them in front of me, but then that's hacker proof as long as I don't put them in front of the camera here.
No.
The thing about using a password manager, though, is it's not going to come up with anything. I mean, it's going to have, hash and @ symbol and $ and percent and all that mixed in with commas and periods and exclamation points and uppercase and lowercase letters. And that's what makes it really complicated. And you get 20 of those random characters, you're not going to come up with that in your mind. You're never going to remember it. So I just use a password manager for that. Yeah. Also, third factor or multi-factor authentication. So I've actually downloaded an authentication app on my phone. I use a Microsoft Authenticator. Google's got one. There's a couple other third parties that have one out there. I don't know why, and this probably has zero logic, but I trust Microsoft more than I trust Google. I don't know. That's just something psychological for me, I guess. Anyway, so I use that one, and it's great because then you get like a 6-digit number that lasts 30 seconds that you have to type in as your third thing. I use it on Amazon. I use it on Google already has a third party thing if you use Gmail and Google Calendar and stuff. So I try to use the authenticator as much as possible. If they can text you, yes, SMS and text can be hacked by bad actors. I feel like little old me where I am, and probably not a target for that, but still, it's better to use an authenticator app than to get texted
One thing I learned from my insurance a couple of years back before they started jacking the rate on it was I went over and bought and have an encryption database system that I use for all my client information. It's encrypted, and it's in only I don't even give them access to it except for a particular. I can say you have access for 24 hours or an hour or 15 minutes or one-time usage only with this, and it has a second factor authentication just for the purpose of one for my insurance to say, look, we're doing everything we can to secure any data we have related to our clients, period. and it's not confidential data as it is just client data. It's sometimes, photos we're using for ad campaigns, but it's their data is how we treat it. And because of that, we just lock that thing down and require the authentication process to get access to it, and or send a direct key for them to go over and get their own access. Because I was using, I used Google for general data storage. And if they get into your Gmail account, good gosh, they have the keys to the kingdom for most everything with the G Suites and stuff. Well, Workplace now and stuff like that. So you gotta be very careful by putting it all in one. It literally means all in one can be had for that too. So
true. I used to do group sales for a company for a while, and so I signed up because a lot of the hotels will reward the salesperson by giving them matching reward points for the group, and in lieu of some commission or whatever. And so, of course, I've got Marriott Bonvoy, and I've got Hilton, and I've got you name it. And so an article pops up the other day saying, registering with a rewards program puts you at hacker additional risk, and these are why you shouldn't, or this is why you shouldn't do it, and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, okay, yeah, I'm guilty of that too.
I think more people use a kind of a junk mail for most of their connections. And that junk mail isn't used for connecting to my storage of things that I usually use for other stuff. But I'm also all over the place. I have, between Dropboxes and Google Drives and, encrypted boxes and stuff like this. But I also, with our usages of passwords, I like the blind password systems, like what we use, RoboForm, LastPass, things like that, that the users do not see the passwords. They just know that their user account is allowing them to access whatever we give them permission to use. And they don't see the actual user password information associated with the account. As an extra layer for what we do, like, okay, if we're getting the keys to a client, to a certain accounts, we treat it as assets. And for that reason, even people that I have working with me, you don't need to know what that is. You just need to know you have access to what we're asking you to do with that account access.
Right.
It's a pain in the butt. I mean, I've gone through, because I get lazy. I have been before, where I tend to have like stuff that I want to be able to remember and type through. And I've purposely tried to wean myself off of that, where it's like, no, go trust the password system. Let it create a nice long gibberish password and give yourself a key to that, not where you have to go, oh, let me just type in the password because it's in my head. It's like, yeah.
Now, how dangerous is it to allow your internet browser to remember your password? So like I go on Chrome, for example, and logging into something that maybe it's just my email or whatever, and I don't remember the password, but fortunately Chrome does for me, right? And that makes my life easier, and I'm happy with that. Is that a bad practice?
Yes.
Then why does Chrome?
I'm sorry, I was a little vague on that one. You seem very iffy on that.
It's Google. It's Google.
Carrie, you're a consultant. Remember, the answer is it depends. No, I'm teasing.
Isn't it Google Password Manager?
Yeah, like the one that's built into the Chrome browser, or any browser for that matter. Safari has theirs built in. I'm going to say the Apple one is a little bit more encrypted, but still, this is what one of my professors taught me. And I kind of went back and forth on this. And like I said, I still have Hilton Honors and Marriott Bonvoy. I still have all these things that I know are probably more risky than I should. But at the same time, a valid point was made, and that was the browser that is built into your system. Listen to what I just said, is built into your system. So if someone hacks into your browser on Safari or Microsoft Edge on a Windows machine, they've got a little bit more access to your system than they would if you were using a third-party browser. I use Brave, which is Chromium-based, so it works like Chrome, but it's got a ton of blockers in there for ads and trackers. And then if I'm really feeling paranoid, I've got my NordVPN, and it's got an ad blocker and tracking blocker on that as well. So if I don't want, the world to know what I'm shopping for, so I can be advertised to, Google, it makes your life more complicated, but to try and use, all of the cybersecurity professionals that I've talked to pretty much universally use Firefox. And a lot of them go so far as there's an app for iPhones and Android called Firefox Focus. And basically it is a private browser that doesn't allow any tracking and doesn't remember, as soon as you close it, it's gone. So you log into Facebook on that, when you close it or move on to something else, everything is logged out and deleted. And so I said, well, then what do you do if you're just surfing the web? And one of them said, I don't surf the web. He goes, I look up one thing that I need to, and then everything is done, and I do not click on any links. One of them went so far as to say he doesn't even shop online. And I was like,
well, that seems like a joyless existence.
No, right?
I mean, if Amazon can't get it to me,
To me, that's where that risk matrix comes in. You know? And I think, Lauren, you brought up an interesting point about the fact that you even have cybersecurity insurance. You know, do hotels have that in all cases? And I some do, I know, and some don't, I know. Right? I mean, that right there is a sign of, you know, how seriously are you taking this? Are you thinking about the potential risks here, and again, the impacts and the likelihood of that coming?
Yeah, and you brought up this other thing, Nord and stuff like that. VPNs, I lived, and I actually got this habit, Dean, when we were at Derbysoft, working with them, of going to China, because that was the only way to talk to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, I got into this habit of I use ExpressVPN, and yes, but for anything like that, usually. And then I also set it up even here in my office, because I've Mac keyed all of my nobody can get into my network here because I Mac keyed everything. Unless you're on my computer that I said you can be on, or phone or iPad, which is all our stuff, because it's just my, you know, that's it. Nobody else can get into our system without a Mac.
Not a very user-friendly environment.
No, my neighbors can't use it. Damn it, it's my system. No.
Hey, you know, that brings up a good question, and I know the answer to this. Okay, so by putting that out there, but it's a good discussion point, right? So when I travel to Shanghai, or I'm traveling to Miami or New York City, Los Angeles, whatever it may be, I'm very careful about what I'm doing with my laptop, the sites I go to, you know, and all my security. When I'm in Norfolk, Nebraska, not so much, right? I generally think, you know, that the retired farmer across the street over here, he's not going to hack my system. I feel pretty safe. But is that a common misconception?
I would think you're pretty safe in Norfolk, Nebraska.
Did you not watch those movies where the farmer had the missile silo under his barn? Did you not see those movies?
Exactly.
You know, I used to live. So sorry, Gary, I'll let you answer the question. I used to live on 3.5 acres, and I remember we had an open Wi-Fi network, and I mentioned that to the guy who ran IT for me at the company where I worked at the time at Leading Hotels, and he was shocked that I had an open Wi-Fi network, and he was like, you know, people can just get in there and do anything. I'm like, Brian, I live in a private lot in the middle of 3.5 acres. Anybody who is on my private network is like in my house at that point. The fact that they're on my network is a much bigger problem than the fact that they're, you know, on my network, right? But obviously, today I live in an apartment building. That has changed. Gary, you started to say.
But real quick, though, cybersecurity is not localized, though, right? So that guy who's in Israel or whatever trying to hack a system could just as likely hack your system in Miami as he could hack your system in Norfolk, Nebraska.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is, the hackers, if someone in the 3 state bad actors that we talked about a lot are obviously China, North Korea, and Russia. If one of those governments wants into a system, they're going to put all of their resources towards it, and they're going to get in. That's just all there is to it. Just like the NSA, if they want into something, they're going to get into something. If they want to decrypt something, they'll figure out how to decrypt it. I mean, you've got to take common sense things to protect yourself as much as you can with insurance and backup and all that, because at the end of the day, if someone really wants to do it, they're going to do it. If you're out in the middle of nowhere on that Wi-Fi system, yeah, someone from Israel can't get onto his Wi-Fi, but they could still hack into his system if that's what they want to.
Oh, sure, of course.
Wi-Fi login and password isn't going to really stop that.
So Tim, you're the quintessential Jamie Lee Curtis getting the phone call saying they're in the house. The calls from the house.
I mean, in that specific case, yes. And first of all, I want to make that abundantly clear. Obviously, what Carrie's saying is exactly right. This didn't mean I didn't have passwords on things. It meant my Wi-Fi router, you know, had a 100-foot range. If you were within the 100-foot range, you were in my house. Like, the fact that you were on my Wi-Fi router was not my biggest concern at that moment.
Right.
But obviously, you know, you have to have passwords for all the other stuff and things.
So I'm going to take advantage of the fact I get Carrie to ask this. So we're going through an active dialogue right now with the client. We're going through the security protocol information, looking at it and so forth. And you have password protocols. And here's our camps of thought, which I think are echoing a lot of people's camps of thought. If I force renewals of passwords, I'm going to get people quickly learn what the cycle of them are, and they just keep their series of 4 or 5, and that's what they rotate between because they know after the 4th one they can use the 5th one again.
We've all done that. We've all done that.
All done it. The second is giving them the squiggly scoopies, the ampersandy everythings. Okay. They're just going to find some other way to remember typing and they're writing that and leave that somewhere else, which also defeats the purpose because one of their coworkers or something, it's underneath the keyboard. He always leaves it there because that's where he looks every time he goes has to log in.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that.
Leaving a key under the mat. Everybody's going to like them.
Yeah, and if you leave them to create their own and don't enforce the repetitiveness restriction and so forth, you get laziness of it's familiar, it's the same, it just stays the same. So what is the better way anyway? Is there what have you found successful to help people get the security mindset for their teams without it being such a massive inconvenience or breach of protocol?
Having not implemented one of those systems myself for a client yet, I'm going to say LastPass, those guys, they've got corporate or enterprise programs, and I would just make sure every employee, if it's work and mission critical, and then how do you do this? With people working from home, a friend of mine works for a big major corporation from home. She actually has a VPN router that puts her computer on the network, and she can only use that computer on that network and only with, the programs that she's allowed to use and the website that she's supposed to go to for that particular company. So I would like to see everyone, and especially if it's in-house, there's that. And then if you did a separate network that was a guest network and your employee's on break and wants to look at Facebook or something on their phone, then they can do that. But on the main network, I would have it locked down. I would get enterprise, 1Password, LastPass, NordPass, whatever, and make everyone use it. And then get the 2-factor authentication thing going too. All the there's authenticator apps that have enterprise level, systems, and you can get that done.
If you want to
make it so that if an employee, there's got to be a back door, I guess, if you got an employee who turns into a bad actor or a bidder because they got fired, but that would be the point of the enterprise level.
Sure. Yeah, and then LastPass things like NordPass for anybody that would, if they follow AppSumo, has a 1-year plan for $29 right now. If you're interested, they threw up a special. But
I was on ExpressVPN and they wanted like $100 and something for me to renew, and then that's when I found NordPass.
Yeah, it's like
$50 for like 5 years or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to push back on this for 1 second. I'm going to be a contrarian for 1 second. And first of all, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm a
contrarian, so that's music to my ears.
No, but I want to note what just happened there. We're talking about how important this is. We're talking about how critical this is. And the first thing you both said was, yeah, but this was too expensive. So here's the coupon code. So use this one. Think about the risk to your business. Maybe it's worth it to spend the $100 a year. And I say this more for people who are watching the show. What would it cost you if this were to happen to your business? Is it worth $100 a year?
So an enterprise corporation isn't just going to go and have everyone sign up with their own credit card for the consumer level.
Of course. I'm being a little bit of a curmudgeon on that one. I will.
Yeah. And I hate to say it, but when I see that a company is based in Switzerland or Norway, I trust it more than if it's based in New York. I don't know why, I just do. And I probably shouldn't, but I do. So with Nord and Express, the VPNs that are, especially if they're in the EU, Norway isn't necessarily in the EU, but if they're in the EU or in a region that's kind of regulated like that, they've got a lot more transparency and regulation than the US does. So I've kind of decided to err on that side of things. And NordVPN is the cheaper one this week. ExpressVPN will be the cheaper one next week. They all do whatever they have to do.
So another aspect of this was and this turned into a very lively conversation as well, was the protocol of onboarding team members and offboarding team members and the auditing process that apparently does not exist in most people's infrastructure of doing this. And I say this totally from first person perspective. I have 100% of the time never been introduced to a new client after doing an audit on accessing accounts that we did not find deadwood, previous agencies, previous employees that that are still in systems of access because they were never removed. And then what was even worse was sometimes we're the administrative control of the asset of the company, and they're gone. Literally, if it wasn't for the fact they left some password on a sheet of paper, you would not get into your Facebook account for your company because they were the ones that created it. Because at the time you said, "Yeah, Bob knows that stuff. Have Bob do it." And
Lauren, I'm going to go one better on this one.
Okay. Ooh, I see you're 5 and Bray's you 20.
I pitched business to a potential client some time ago, pre-pandemic, just to give some context on this, and I'm keeping this exceedingly anonymous for reasons that will be obvious in a moment, who gave me access to a couple of things so I could do an initial assessment to put together a proposal. I did not win the business, and I still have access. And I've emailed them to let them know that I still have access.
And you still have access.
I still have access.
I mean, you're ethical and they expect that. But at the same time,
good Lord, what are you doing? This is a terrible idea.
Before they even told you that they weren't going to use you, they should have destroyed that.
Correct. Absolutely.
I still have access to data places that I've told them exactly what you did, Tim. It's like, look, dudes, I don't need to be here anymore. You need to take me up. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm still going back. And then all of a sudden I get this, and I think I've shared this with you on the show a few months back. I got a call about 6 months ago from a previous client that said, "Hey, Lauren, listen, do you have still access to our AdWords account?" I don't know. Let me go look. Yeah. He's like, "Oh, thank God, because the dude we had in charge is gone and we don't have it." I'm like, seriously, you're relying on bad auditing.
Yeah.
And I literally brought them in and says, "Do me a favor. Take me off." So no, we want you. I was like, "Dude, you don't pay me to be in here anymore. I'm sorry."
So Carrie, from a cybersecurity professional's point of view, is that a bad idea?
Yeah. Again, I would do some kind of enterprise level password manager so that if it quits, you've got access to it and you can change it if there's a way that the employee doesn't even see the password, that's probably better. But if they do see it, they can always write it down and take it home with them. So make sure that it gets changed the second that employee is gone.
And there are some softwares out there now that are beginning to offer onboarding, because this is something that fell in the cracks of things. HR thought it was an IT issue. Hey, IT handles accesses to accounts, blah, 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 blah. And so HR wasn't worried that when Suzy Q was terminated or let go or changed off into the horizon, that somebody should follow what Suzy Q had access to. They think that IT would be aware of that. And sometimes IT didn't know Suzy's not here anymore. Oh, we should go take her.
Exactly.
There's no collaboration to that. And operations GMs or those in executive position roles there isn't the first pop in mind saying, okay, did we clarify between HR and tech access and all this? So there's actually a cottage businesses are growing up now that are doing onboarding logistics for this and offboarding logistics, that it goes into HR's lap and says, when this happens to any staff changes, whether they change a position or no longer in a position, there is a protocol that kicks up and says, click this button, and it takes them off of what we gave them access to immediately. Then we can go back and take them off of what we, like Marriott's or Hilton's that have, access that you pay for, and you can go in and disseminate those later. But at least you stop them being able to access. And they're being evaluated. I'm evaluating one right now, actually.
Yeah, if there's a way to make it quick and easy, and you can do it from one place when the person's gone, that's better. And if not, just make sure that it's all taken care of the old-fashioned way.
Yeah. But it's something that through the discussions anyway, people realize it's just something nobody said, I own it. Nobody, no department said that. HR is like, why would I be worried about IT access? I'm worried about, HR protocols, following proper guidance. Did we do all the things according to our SOPs and stuff? Not about whether they had access keys. So it is interesting.
I'd like to say, by the way, this is a fascinating discussion. Carrie, thank you so much for joining. Unfortunately, I do have to drop here at the bottom of the hour, but brilliant stuff. Thanks for joining. I'm saying thanks for joining, and I'm the one leaving. But
should I go? Tim, thank you for joining. It was a pleasure to see you. I'm glad to see you back in. And for those who want to find you on your podcast and all the other cool stuff that you're doing out in the public world, where at?
Very simple. TimPeter.com is where you can find me. TimPeter.com/podcasts for the podcast. I'm Tim Peter on pretty much all the social networks except for Twitter, where I'm at TCPeter. And my password is password1234. So you can just go ahead and log in.
Just log in to you. Wait a minute, that was your TikTok password, wasn't it? I thought that was TikTok for you.
Yeah, but once I started doing that weird little dance thing, you know,
Yeah.
I had to. Anyway, it's great seeing you all. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Have a great
Thank
weekend.
you.
and
Have a
look
good
forward to
weekend.
seeing you in a week or
Thanks
so.
for coming
All right,
in.
bye now.
I appreciate it. Bye. Hi. So what I mean from our conversations from security, from a hotel's perspective, and we've talked about horror stories, we've talked about things that people should be aware of or things they should do. From your perspective, if somebody's just now taking the impact of what's happening in the news and saying, "What are we doing?" and there's no answers to those questions, like, "What do you mean what we're doing? We're doing what we do, which is nothing." You know, where do you think they should start? How do you see them approaching what they should first start tackling? Grab insurance quickly, or create protocols first and then go to insurance? I mean, where do they go?
If they have an IT department, fire them because they should have been on top of this. If they don't, I mean, the first step, literally the very first step, make sure every computer in there is up to date. Nothing running like some old version of Windows that may have 0 days that are easily exploitable. Update all that first, then do it as quickly as you can, a thorough RFP with a couple of the cybersecurity providers that are in the hotel space. And I would say try to stay with some that are in the hotel space just because they're the ones that are going to understand the complexity of the hotel systems, from the pay-per-view and cable TV system to the property management system to the guest Wi-Fi to the, you name it, whatever there is on property, the handheld, the apps that the housekeeping may use to interface with PMS, and then the guest Wi-Fi versus the Wi-Fi that maybe the housekeeping may have access to. Make sure that those are separate networks. Even within the Wi-Fi network, you can subnet, meaning that you can set up multiple networks on the same routers that won't be able to communicate with each other, and make sure that is set up, and make sure that, like I said, you've got someone who understands all of this. And that's why I would lean toward the players in the hospitality industry. Let's see, where else was I going with this? Yeah, replace your IT department.
Fire the dude. Okay, well, okay. Now I'm going to humanize this and flip it over to the other side because Adele deals with culture in hotels. From 1 minute, a housekeeper has been doing what she's been doing, or director of housekeeping or supervisor, whatever, and there's not been any requirements, restrictions, and or limitations as to how they were doing this. They had access to wherever they wanted to, maybe even they loaded it up at home, whatever they did. Now all of a sudden everything's coming down like a hammer. All right, everyone, this is the deal. No more of this. We're going to do this. This is how we're doing. This is where you get here's this scribbly password, blah, blah, blah. Adele, from your perspective, how do you transition from 180, basically? You're throwing it in reverse or whatever, from going 100 miles an hour in one direction. How do you get everyone for doing everything they're doing right now, all the crap that we're dealing with and lack of bandwidth and everything? Oh, well, let's just pile this on the pile of happiness and joy. How do you think companies can handle this integration process?
You know what? I think that unfortunately, it's something terrible that we have to deal with, and we just have to be grown up enough about it to know to just put one step in front of the other. And getting information like this, update the computers, get an RFP from some cyber security people that are in hospitality, getting the insurance, changing the passwords, getting that LastPass or something like that going. We just have to wake up and smell the coffee. There's just no way to avoid it. Now, you mentioned housekeepers. They probably don't have a laptop to work with. They're working on their phones. So I wanted to ask Carrie, actually, let's say there's a communication tool, some sort of a house,
Alice, firewall,
yeah. But I was thinking about, Nudge or Beekeeper or something like that, where the teams are communicating with each other on the phone, or even, it could be Zingle or anything. Or is it better to communicate not in an email? Does it have any advantages to use Slack or Monday or something like this instead of communicating? Go ahead.
At the end of the day, a lot of that can be intercepted, but at the same time, 90% of email isn't mission critical, really. Like if somebody sees that somebody got an email to clean room 403, unless they're going to go and rob the person in 403, there's really no risk there. If it were my hotel, the employees wouldn't use their own phones for any of that. Like I said, they could put their phone on the guest network and check their Facebook when they want to. They could get another device. A lot of the companies out there, they either have devices or you can get some kind of specifically made Android or something like that would then just be used for the housekeeping and communication apps kind of a thing. It's more expense, but that's where the security is. As far as marketing is concerned, this is where I put on my marketing hat. When you're presenting this to housekeeping and the other employees, you're also talking about how you're protecting them and their private data and their social security number that's in the HR system, and hopefully giving them habits that they'll then take home with them to protect their family. And maybe make sure that part of the training is, and when you're at home, you should do this to protect your credit, your kids' information, your, all the other things. I hate to say it, but an ounce of fear is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
And then the other thing is the company that you hire to help you implement all this, they're going to have a training program, and it may cost money, but they can send someone to come do, one training for each shift, and then one training for the people that were working during those shifts over the course of 2 or 3 days, and make sure that everyone in the hotel understands why it's important, not only for the hotel, but for them personally, because while they're working in an area like that and their phone is connected, they are vulnerable and they need to know that. And I think that will give them more of a sense of ownership for the property as well.
Is there some kind of like a video that people can watch in their own time? Everybody's scattered so much in the hospitality business. Our hours are so different, and they're so busy
and all that. Yeah, there's several. All the companies, of course, have their own training videos that they would be able to share. There's a number of them on YouTube, which I've written down in a notebook somewhere that I should be able to share with you. But yeah, the one that proved that the weakest point is the least secure website that an employee goes on an employee laptop was the most impactful for me, because it had basically this woman working at a coffee shop, and she was a full-time hacker, and she had it all justified in her head why she was doing what she was doing. And then she figured out somebody went to the bowling alley and then got onto the network and did a ransomware thing and got a whole bunch of Bitcoin.
Oh, wow.
So one thing that we've had in discussions too, and this goes a little bit. See, I'm not totally on board. I understand your purpose of security by saying that the company should provide their own hardware. I've always been a person against the fact that hardware breeds maintenance breeds service issue breeds excuses as to, well, I couldn't get that because of this or whatever like that. And so having the personal unit used is to me a viable thing, not for security reasons, but from a functionality. Everybody carries their phone. Their phone doesn't go far away. They use it all the time. And if it doesn't take space from them, or it's not something that is in violation to their personal aspect of their usage, then I'm fine with it. But one thing we talked about was there is actually a platform, is to make the platform only work within the Wi-Fi of the hotel. So even if they lose their phone, destroy the phone, somebody gets on their phone, if they're not in the network itself, and even that still requires their authentication that they are who they are to get on it, that would be a viable stopgap. Like, okay, we're not giving them
there. And then all the players, like you were mentioning, Beekeeper and Alice and all those guys, they've got security. I would just grill them about it and audit them. Make sure that you're satisfied with the level of security that they're going to provide when your employee uses a BYOD, bring your own device, to use it and their phone. And like you said, yes, you can geo target it, or you can by IP address or by something MAC address, make it so that only that one person's one device uses it. And then when they quit, make sure that gets cleaned up.
And that's the worst. Yeah, that's the important part. The more you build it, the more you have to do at the tail end of it as well. Yeah.
One thing. So do you think it's better to use an app or some other system than use email? Or is it no difference?
I think people pay more attention to the other apps if it's urgent than they do email.
But security-wise, does it make it?
I don't know. I think some of the apps are probably more secure than most email, but at the same time, if the email is locked down and has two-step authentication.
Yeah, it's a matter of trust too, because if you violate the app's trust, where you say, "Oh, an app is, nobody be on this app unless it was legit," if you imply that trust to it, and then somebody does hack it, they're going to do more damage because it's going to be less likely people will be resistant to. That doesn't seem like Dean's email or Dean's message, but it's on it's on our app network, so it must be legit because nobody else would be there except for really Dean. And in fact, somebody hacked Dean, and now they're in the system, and because of that, they're getting away with a lot more than they would have been had it been a skeptical email. Like, wait a minute, Dean doesn't send emails that talk about looking at his body. At least not as many as I get, but I'm just saying. But
having worked in software as a service for many years, actually, and sold software platforms to different companies out there, one of the questions we would often get would be, how many logins can I create on this? And my answer eventually became as many as you can manage. The true answer is you probably could have done an unlimited number of them. But all too often, we would set up all these logins, and a year later, that login from John Doe that I created a year ago is still sitting there, and nobody's done anything with it. And then they take it a step further, and people want you to get really fancy with your software development and have open auth libraries to where now one login gets you to everything. Wow, isn't that really cool? It's really easy. But holy crap, how much stuff are you giving them access to? And then you're not managing those logins and profiles. A year, and like Tim was saying in his example, a year later, there it is. It's still something you can get into.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you were selling software as a service, and I'm not exactly familiar with what software you were selling exactly, but how often during an RFP process and presentation process were people asking you about your security measures?
This goes back a few years, so it was less critical then than it is today. But I tell you, the one time we did an RFP for some hotels in Las Vegas. And when we did an RFP for Las Vegas, holy crap, did they ever drill into that hard?
Oh, I'm sure.
They went all the way in. They wanted to know
Vegas is a different animal.
But a lot of times, nobody even asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet that's changing, though. I'm sure.
Yeah. It evolved just like when GDPR first rolled out. All of a sudden, the conversation came up as to what are we doing with this data? Who does have access to this data? How are we using this data? And then it got into CCPA and stuff. There's been more questions about data security and usage since all the rules have come into play because they've seen the teeth to the tiger about what you can get fined if you do this sloppy. And there's the education process we had to go to with well-intended salespeople that decided to take a list from a wedding place thing that they went to that was provided to them and throw them out an email, from their hotel, little not knowing that they never compared it to the do not unsubscribe list that the hotel was supposed to be running that they didn't pay attention to. And now somebody got a spam email or contested that it was a spam email because they received an email from a hotel that they thought they said they didn't want to receive emails from the fact that the salesperson didn't do due diligence. So I guess in strange ways, this year might be the year because of it being in the forefront of news that companies are saying, wait a minute, what are we doing? And to Tim's earlier point, I for clients I've talked to, they don't have insurance. Or have not considered the aspect of insurance with it, probably because out of their process, it's an expensive piece to have. They had an NBC News, the cybersecurity insurance business this year so far is a $48 billion business. That's premiums.
$48 billion.
Wow.
I mean, dang. And that, so here I am in Florida, and most places are canceling their homeowners insurance because they spend too much money for the hurricanes and so forth and so on. So a lot of insurance companies going away. And right now, the cybersecurity business is just making money because of raising rates and so forth for the vulnerability factor. There's going to be points just by I noticed in the Q&A that I've had to go through 4 pages of stuff. They mean it when they say, "What is your written policy?" Not do you have a policy? Did you think about a policy? But what is your written policy? Share it with us. We want, if you did this security auditing, like I'm talking about, that you do, Carrie, when did you do it? What were the results? What was the protocols you learned afterwards? They're not just asking to check a box. They're literally, no, you need to tell us what this stuff is before we decide whether we're going to cover you insurance-wise. They're very particular about that in the insurances that are out there right now. So yeah, it's going to be something bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes on, I guess. Karen, did we miss something from a security question point of view? I mean, do you have the keys to the universe on something we missed?
No, I got some funny stories I can tell you. But
Oh, cool. Okay, I'm doing
yes.
a story.
well, this one isn't a funny story, but a friend of mine owns an independent hotel, and she goes, I know you just, I mean, like I had just finished, not even, I think I had like 4 more months of this cybersecurity class to go, but she said, can you see if you can get into my network? And so using the basic tools that I had, I went, and she said, I think I've got a really good IT person. Well, she did. I mean, there was nothing. I mean, there was no hacking into a router. There was nothing. I could not get through. But one thing that was not a security risk to her, but to previous guests, is she had just consumer level Fire TV, Amazon Fire TV things plugged in to the TV, and every previous guest that was there had logged in. So I had like 14 profiles to choose from. Now on my Apple TV, I've got a 6-digit or I don't know, 6 or 8-digit code. So if I want to buy or rent a movie, I have to type that in. But I probably could have played around and found someone who didn't have that and rented movies and done all kinds of things. So I told her she needed to make sure that housekeeping reset the Fire TVs every time. And then she said, well, what if somebody comes along and they don't even have Amazon or a way to log in? And I said, well, then I guess they're just not going to watch TV.
Dude, you literally, from a consumer side of things, that's absolutely true story for a client that I have that we're talking through. It's like, yeah, well, we have to go up and reset the I think they were, no, they were Roku's.
Okay.
You know, he said, yeah, we got to go, and it's part of our housekeeping protocol. They're going to go and make sure it's all reset. Okay, one, trusting your team isn't going to go throw something up there while there's account access still. But the other is like a lot in this rush to have smart TVs in your hotels, they've circumnavigated the used to be ecosystem of you had to have the hardware, they had to be per service provider. It was very expensive. Now it's just buy a smart TV, and as long as you have enough local bandwidth cable plugged into the hotel, you can run the TVs for whatever you want them to. You know, to try to keep up with the Marriott. Yeah, but you got to go in and make sure. And if you're using this stuff, it's like I actually carry my own Roku stick if I didn't want to throw something, because that way it's like I do my own with it. But I haven't traveled past a year and a half, so I don't even know if I'm still going to do that in future tests. Because nowadays I get my VR goggles, I just put them on, I can watch Netflix on those.
I've got a laptop that I figure if I want to watch one of the services that I have, I'll just do that. Right. And then I just enjoy cable. It's like a new thing for me.
Watching local news. There's some very cool, like I said, we started this show, was like the OTT programs out there. There's channels that are coming up for some crazy stuff that people now have a whole new venue of putting content out there, you know, on their own channels of stuff. And there's a really neat one called Local News that just literally you can pick all these cities from around the world and watch local news. And it's fascinating just to catch up with stuff. Yeah. You know, just, okay, I lived in Dallas. Let me go watch some Dallas news and, you know, wherever. And you just get to see story covers in different ways. But yeah. What other fun story do you have?
It's a security, but it's more of a traditional security, not cybersecurity. Funny story. I work for a company in Texas, and everything sounds a little bit more charming with a Texas and/or Southern accent. And this woman had quit the company and gone to work for a competitor. And we'd all, you know, had cake for her in the break room, and she got her little box of stuff and went off to her car. And then almost immediately, we got a notification that the access code for all the doors to enter our office, it was in a big office building where there was like a keypad on the doors, that the code had changed. And one of the girls that I worked with looked at me and she said, her seat hadn't even cooled off yet.
They were on it.
Bless her heart.
Yeah, exactly. They took the security, at least of the building, seriously. And back then, this was early enough that you weren't remoting in and you didn't really have access to the systems outside of work. So that was nothing to worry about. But it was.
We've had
having access to all the computers was in the building, and so if you didn't have access, then that made it easier for HR and the other departments.
Yeah. It is a bit dehumanizing, Adele, to your point on something earlier, is like protocol for where being places in when somebody has been let go or they've decided to leave, and at that time they do that, their laptop, their phone, if it was provided to them, all that keys off. And unfortunately, you know, stories to be told, the timing of it hasn't always been in sync with when the information was shared. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden it's hey, my phone's not working anymore. Oh yeah, Bob, come on in for a minute.
About that.
Yeah, it's sometimes eager IT got a little ahead of themselves.
Microsoft 365 subscription, and then the company that I worked for gave us a corporate Microsoft 365 subscription. And you can have more than one account on your device. On an iOS device, you just log into both of them, and that's all there is to it. On an Android device, you have to give your IT department access to remotely wipe your phone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole thing.
Yeah, blip.
I thought they can wipe all of my personal stuff along with just, I mean, if it said just to wipe the Microsoft portion of it, but it was to wipe the phone, and I was kind of surprised by that. And I thought our IT person probably doesn't even know they have that access. So
Yeah. Who pissed me off today?
Exactly.
But no, Google, the workspace now, the G Suite prior, one of the things we're talking about security is, and we're talking about solutions for clients in that sense, where do you move everybody over to? Some companies, management companies, they pretty much existed. Their email systems were based on their brand website. Hey, let's put the email accounts together for that, and so that the name represents it rather than masking or anything like this. They don't know these things. They just know it's like, oh, it's company website, company email, and it's very open. And they forget how much access they have. And then when things like this, where they have to start answering security questions for insurance or whatever have you, it's like, no, now you have to consider Google Workspace or 365. Like,
right.
Where do you put that control that says we can facilitate securing down accesses to stuff rather than just Bob's a good old boy. He's going to unsubscribe from our program when we let him. No, you need to have the power to hit the big button, as you said, and go, whoop, no more things on your phone, and poof, they disappear. It's painful in that sense because the first reaction, and I'm sure Dell, you can talk to it, is a feeling of lack of trust. Well, wait a minute, for years, this is how it worked, and now all of a sudden, you don't trust me. I got to go through fingerprint, eye scan, retina thing, go take a cup to the bathroom to prove that I am who I am to get into the system. There's a different feeling about that.
I trust you, but I don't trust everybody else.
Yeah.
It's hard to implement these things, and that's kind of what the discussions are right now with one client that we're going through this process is like, these people have been with me for forever. Now all of a sudden I tell them I got to make them go through all these protocols. Can I just do that now forward? And it's like, as long as you want to leave this barn door open, sure. If you want it to be that they will always have the ability to circumnavigate where you're implementing it for security. If you trust them that much, sure. Might as well give them the key to your house too. Go ahead.
But we have to protect people too. When at my last company, I got an email threatening if I didn't pay this, few thousands of dollars. They know my passwords to everything, and they have access to all my pictures. Like, really, like at my age, really, there's nothing.
I'll share them first.
There's just nothing.
Would you like my some?
There's nothing.
Well, if you want screenshots of memes and a couple of pictures of, like, I don't know, friends out to dinner, you go for it.
I got some pictures of Dean in some Hawaiian shirts, but then we get the show here, so I'm kind of like depleting my own value proposition.
Yeah, I just deleted it and ignored it and showed it to the company that was handling our IT, just to make sure that they were aware of what was going on before I deleted it. And and of course nothing happened. But as an employee, I want to know that my company is trying to protect me from getting a stupid email like that.
Well,
go ahead, Dean.
They do target people that they feel are going to be susceptible, because it only takes, like you were saying, the weakest link, right? It only takes that one person to go, hey, okay, maybe this is legit, and I'll tell you, my mom has been targeted by scammers in so many different ways that are trying to do exactly that. She finally got to the point where she calls me first and goes, Dean, is this something I should look at? And usually the answer is no. But yeah, they have tried and tried again because they know she is very susceptible. They'll find that person who will click that link, who will do whatever they want to do.
My parents are in their late 80s, and I'd say 3 times a month, they will call me and ask me if it's okay to click on something or if it's a scam. and my father came so close. And I've heard this story from many other people who live in senior living places, or that as someone, they'll go to a website to look at something, they're trying to find some answer to some question, and then somebody calls them, say, this is in response to I was calling to help you with your Microsoft whatever, or your Apple phone whatever, and oh, you should pay me, but you know what, go and get some gift cards and then tell me the codes on it. And my father was in his jacket with his shoes on, ready to go to the Apple store, and a really highly educated person. But at that point, they just trust that because he was looking for it and then he got a call, he thought that they were calling to help him, not that somebody else was observing what he was doing.
A company that I worked for before, when that one woman kind of got ripped off, basically, we had a new protocol that if the CEO needed to talk to you, it would first go through your supervisor. So then your supervisor would contact you and say, so-and-so wants to talk to you, or ask me to pass this message along to you, so that it wasn't just, because when the CEO sends out an email, people jump. And he was like, so instead of that, unless you're already had to have a phone conversation or something with him first, otherwise any direction or anything you're going to get from the CEO is going to come from your immediate supervisor, and then you'll be able to talk to him about it directly. And that definitely helped, because everybody still kept getting random phishing emails from the CEO from various and sundry email addresses. And the other thing you were talking about with, with using, the Internet of Things. And my thought on it was, there's a lot of things that the Internet of Things does actually make a lot simpler, and helping with communication, all that is great. But do you really need the automated blinds? I mean, doesn't that stick? Someone work just fine?
Flopping around the bed going, oh, where's the button for the blinds? You just tell Google and it's all good.
Or the button. Yeah, exactly. It can be hardwired in or remote controlled with something that isn't connected to the internet. Push a button. I mean, there's that.
Interesting.
I think we overcomplicate things sometimes.
True.
So those iPads where you can control the room are not a favorite of yours.
Well, not really. I mean, they can be as secured as anything, and it's not that the thief wants to run the blinds. It's that the blinds might be a network gateway for them to then get in to the main system.
But if you have it on the guest network and not on the same network as the PMS and other things, then you're safer.
Unless that one employee plugs that one mission critical system that is connected to the other net, or that bridges that gap, that air gap, if you will.
I see.
Yeah. So going back to a little bit of content, I wouldn't say theft, because
I need to go in 2 minutes, unfortunately.
Yep. So we're going through the process of keeping people from taking information. Back in the old day, it was the Rolodex, for lack of a better reference point. Salespeople had their Rolodex. That was their value proposition when they were brought on, is they had the contacts and the information to relate to other people to derive business from, and it was their Rolodex. So should you lose them and the Rolodex. We've since, of course, automated that. And we have internal systems. We have one of the IT people I'm working with this particular client, because they're so security focused right now, is there is a function capability now that data cannot be extracted to an outside source of the network and without a prior authorization. It keys out saying, hey, you want to take data off of our network to a non-network unit, you need a authorization code. So he had this running at one hotel for a while because he was very proud of this. Problem was, the person we started noticing in their platform that they use for group business had incomplete information. They weren't putting their network information into the system. It was the guy's name or the girl's name, and that was it. There was no full out as to what their person's profile was. Turned out their workaround was, it was my contact, I'm not putting it on your system. which comes to what we said, Adele, of the, you don't trust me, I don't trust you. You know what? This is my thing, not your thing. This is my guy, not your guy. I'll give you what you need to make it into the system, Delphi, to book it and block it, but I'm not giving the information that I have about this person. You didn't pay me that. And it's like, well, now it comes in this dilemma. It's like, wait a minute, you're on our team, you're our sales guy. What is what's the pushback? Like, are you right? Like, hey, you brought him into your dialogue. And so
I will. I'm going to leave you and let you finish discussing that. In my 2 cents, where I got my database, I originally was always keeping it in my Google Contacts. Then I flagged it based on the industry, and then I exported that. And it's in an Excel spreadsheet, and I only put it in the company database if I was actually working with that company on behalf of the company. And until I made a contact on behalf of that company, it didn't go in a company database.
See, so you're from the angle of the person. It's like, look, this is my thing.
My contact, they're benefiting from my contact. I'm not just going to give them all of them, even if I don't reach out to them. So,
okay.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Kerry, Kerry, for people to find you, where do they find you? Of course, the website we already posted, but where else is it?
Paparazzi. My email address is my last name, Cooper, at hotelpaparazzi.com. And I'm on Twitter at Hotel Paparazzi. And LinkedIn, you can find me. Kerry L. Cooper is probably the best way to find me.
Awesome, Kerry. Hey, listen, thanks for taking the time today to join us and share all this great information and perspective.
Look forward to seeing you again soon.
I hope so. Please join us on Will, whenever you like. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Kerry. Appreciate the time today.
Thanks.
That was very neat.
Oh, yes. What a really important conversation.
Yeah, that was very nice to bring him on board, and very interesting perspective to that.
I've been watching a lot of his posts lately, actually, on LinkedIn in particular, talking about cybersecurity. So when last night I found out that was our topic for today, I was like, oh, hey, I know a guy. He's been follow him on LinkedIn if you have. He has a lot of good articles he puts there. His website that we put up there has a lot of good content as well. One of the things that I found really interesting, actually, and I've heard this from a lot of different places, I'm sure we'll all agree on it, was why hasn't Microsoft Edge, that internet browser, why hasn't it died yet? Because pretty much everybody seems to agree that it is just absolutely something that should not be used, especially when it comes to cybersecurity.
Huh.
Oh.
I don't know, but I find it annoying that it's constantly begging me to make it, my
default,
my choice. I can't stand that constant interruption. So annoying.
Fortunately for Apple, and it's kind of it's a lull of security that probably shouldn't be there, but Apple just recently, and this is my latest laptop that I bought, and I buy Apple laptops like once every 5 or 6 years because I buy the best I can get it the year that I get it, and it lasts that long. Where I buy a Microsoft laptop, and 2 years later I'm looking for another one. It's kind of weird in that sense, but Apple now just recently they run their own chip, the M1 chip, so they are full hardware themselves. Up until just of November last year, they had to use Intel chips, so there's always a piece that wasn't produced by Apple. Now everything Apple is produced by everything Apple. Good news of it is that it's very hard or harder for Apple to be hacked, other than the soft touch of us being the softest link to that. But from a hardware perspective, isn't. The bad news is everything exists in Apple as Apple. You don't get to say, oh, who else does this stuff? It works only if Apple allows it to work. And Apple doesn't allow things mostly to work unless they build it themselves. So there's a good, bad. It kind of is indicative of what we're talking about for security. It's a very real thing. And Adele, I empathize with you tremendously when it comes to answering those hard questions with team members of, I know the world's changing. Yes, we did trust you because that's what we believed at the time. And it's not that we don't, this is not a representation of our current trust. It's a representation of current times. These things happen. And for as well-intended as you are and what you do to keep your passwords safe, if we allow access on something you control that we don't, and that access allows them to get to us, we're the ones that suffer from, unfortunately, that happening. So we have to create these protocols that we are asking you to go through that you didn't have before, because we want to ensure that we operate safely. Because as you pointed out, Adele, it's not just your safety, it's everybody else that's connected to the system as well. Do you really want your coworkers to unfortunately suffer for the fact that there was a breach on your side that impacted everybody else? And I mean literally that by shutting down our company too. like we can't do business because we can't check in people. And it's weird in the news. There's so many stories that are coming up now of this isn't just a pipeline here and a meat packing here. Thousands per month are suffering through this program.
Yeah.
Thousands of companies, little 7-Elevens that their systems shut down. And yes, the big ones make the news, like hospitals that are shut down and stuff. But there's a lot of little businesses because these things are already in our systems and they just haven't been turned on yet. Somebody hasn't gotten greedy enough going, I want to make some extra cash this weekend. What do I got in there? Let me go over and bang that out and see. And all of a sudden, small businesses, a little coffee shop here or a little trinket bobble shop over there, systems off, or all of a sudden their accounts are being hacked and their money's being drained, which is worse, so.
I definitely need to wrap my head around better the thing about signing in as two different people, signing in one way to the computer with
admin versus
high
user.
level things and then lower level things as someone else. How do you decide what can get into which area? Because I think that's very complicated. Sometimes people say, well, perhaps our employees should not be able to get into Facebook or other social media. Hello, this is the marketing department. And
right.
And we have to get into social media. I mean, we have to see the messages when they're coming in. It's not just good enough to, sign in at the end of the day. That might be 8 hours after the guest has actually made a comment.
There are platforms, and I can tell you one that I use very successfully for exactly what you're saying from a contribution perspective, and it's called Planable. There's lots of others, but this is the one I use. Planable is one that I use that way the users that we put onto that account do not have access to. There's actually an administrative requirement that a person has to authorize the post before it goes out. So no matter who they give the permission to contribute on that platform to, only the designated authority person can actually say that's good to go out, or it makes approval or something like this. That's a nice early easy stopgap. Sprout and places like that do the same kind of thing. But to your point, the reporting process, the review and reporting process, that's a little bit more complicated because you do need some level of authority to see some stuff. But there's plenty of reporting platforms out there that you don't need to have access to anything. They just say, this is what's going on out there. Like Social Insider is a great one that I use to watch what's going on and say, okay, and competitors too, I get to watch theirs and I get to know who they got and what's their favorite post and what time of day did they post, what kind of content did they post, all that stuff without having to have access to anything. But
yeah, but it's social media is just not just about posting. It's about responding to the posts that other people make. Right. And for that, because with Planable or just on your own, you can plan out what you're going to post and only sign in once a day to actually do the posting. But you don't get to decide when someone tweets at 1:00 in the morning that the coffee, I can't believe I'm in a place where the coffee maker isn't working, and your front desk needs to be minding it so they can go up and make their day with a different coffee maker or whatever it is. So, I mean, that's what it should be.
And that goes to what channel you use too. I mean, you're using SMS, because anybody can watch social media. It's whether they're notified or can you react on the platform firsthand. That's when you start getting the questions you're talking about, like who does get that access to do that.
One of our biggest points of failure in hospitality as well is with the whole booking process. So you're getting bookings from travel agents, from OTAs, from all these external sources, and every time that happens, they have to pass data over. Of course, they encrypt the credit cards. They, and OTAs don't always pass you all the data for that very reason, right? That has to be PCI compliant. There's a whole bunch of reasons that you don't get all that data. And if you do, it's highly encrypted. But every time data has to change hands and go from point A to point B, that's a possible point of failure, right? By way of comparison, if that booking is coming to you directly, hey, direct bookings, if that's coming to you directly, not saying that's foolproof, but that eliminates a lot of other possibilities. Now there's only a single point of possible failure, and that's on your systems, which you have more control over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people do send their credit card numbers in emails all the time. And I'm sorry, but I never want to see a credit card authorization form again. That is just awful. What is going on here? Why?
That used to be the norm.
It's awful, but I've been saying it for years. Stop it already. Stop it. And this is a perfect example of the resistance to embracing technology when it's just so obviously the better thing to do.
And there are platforms like ManyChat and QueryBot and so forth that the chat system is encrypted because you are dealing with an interface that is from a site. So on it, it goes directly to the recipient. So it can be a point-to-point encryption. And it is secure for people to put their credit information if they're in direct dialogue with you on those platforms. As to Carrie's point, everything can be hacked. So it's not as if saying there's no way around this. But it's much more challenging for that point-to-point encryption that goes on. But yeah, to anything, it's always better to, because we're not supposed to retain it anyway, which, most systems that you have any payment process through, they have a 48-hour window that you can retain the method of payment that was provided, and then it goes away. And now you have to resolicit that from the provider of it again. So it is, and it really is kind of to the policeman mentality. They always tell you, lock your car. A professional thief, a locked car is not a slowdown. It's just it's something they do. What you're really doing is you're blocking out the 80% opportunistic abuse. The person that goes, oh, this door's unlocked, let me go take whatever's in the car because they were silly enough to leave the door unlocked. You're stopping those people by having your door locked. You're not stopping the person that can walk up. We watched this on TV now. It was the most amazing thing. This dealership down here had all these super exclusive cars that are hard to find. He was a big dealer, and they had these great cars. And they were watching the security. These 6 guys come in, and they're just casually, they're flipping through a sheet. This is at night, flipping through a sheet, pointing to where the cars are. Person walks over and just, they had some sort of crack to it. Get into the car, lights blink, took off. And they just took certain cars out of it. Right, just gone. John just took these amazing, because you're not going to stop those people. You know what I mean? And to Carrie's point, if a country that's the bad players or whatever he says, the Russias or the North Koreas or something, want to get into a system, they're going to. We're not stopping this. We're talking about the people that go over and get into your Wi-Fi going, oh, look, you left admin as your username and default password for the links router on there. Now I'm in your network, and now let me go futz around and see what I can find. You're stopping those people by the preventative measures you're doing. So
I've made it a policy talking about the people opportunistic taking things out of the cars is I just don't leave anything in my car worth taking.
Right.
And it solves the problem. If there was something worth taking that you really wanted, you'd break the window, get in there and get it anyway. So just don't leave the thing.
Yeah.
When I used to have a car and I was living in Queens, in the precinct that had the most auto theft in the city. For some reason, I don't know. Maybe we had nicer cars, and I left the things unlocked. I left the glove compartment open. I left the ashtray or whatever you'd call that thing in the middle open. I took the radio out.
Nothing here.
Nothing to see.
What are you going to do? Take the car? Well,
it kind of brings up a couple of things, old traveling habits I had. And not because of horror. I mean, yes, there were horror stories about housekeepers that, you left everything open so they go through your stuff. It's unfortunate that you would have people on your team that would do that, but things happen. Yeah. Well, now, what I used to do for travel was I always repacked myself before I left the room for the day. My idea was, as a courtesy to the team that came in to clean the room, I knew from a housekeeper's perspective, they always hated having to clean around personal items. If they're going to clean the sink and you have it laid out with everything, they really can't clean the sink because everything's laid out, and they're not going to want to move your stuff because that's a call to the front. Hey, I just came back and my toothbrush is, I left it there and it's over here now. And what are you guys doing? So it's hard. They try to leave as much of your personal items untouched. Well, that doesn't mean they can be efficiently cleaning. So I would pack everything back into my suitcase, save for what I had hanging in the closet, and put the suitcase into the closet. That way they could come into the room and there was literally nothing they had to work around to facilitate what they had to do to service the room. it also meant that I would, in my mind, I wasn't leaving things out that were temptation for, wonder what this is, wonder what that is. I didn't leave hardware or electronics sitting on my desk all wired up going, wonder if he noticed if his iPad was gone. Because human nature is human nature. By the same token, I've had it where I went up to my room, my stuff was gone because they thought I had checked out, and the housekeeper took all my stuff out of the closet going, they must have left this behind. And I
Oh no.
yeah.
Oh, that reminds me of a story. I want to share a little story. The president of the Association of Hotel and Lodging, or whatever it is. Sorry, what is it? Chip Rogers. You know who I mean, right? Okay. So he was on a show. I think it's Hospitality 360 or something, and he shared a story. He said, first of all, I'm going to try to paraphrase as best I can, that the industry does not do enough to think about our employee turnover cost issue, and that we do think about, what somebody makes per hour, what a housekeeper makes per hour, for example, but we don't think about the cost of replacing somebody when and the ramp up time, the training time, all of that. There are so many costs involved, and we are bringing them on, especially now where the salaries are, or the hourly wages are going up and up. And he said, instead, don't just think about that, but also think about, what are you doing to make a person feel like part of the team, and listening to them. And he shared that one hotel told them that they were listening to what their favorite, most valued housekeepers were telling them, that the rooms are absolutely being trashed. Why are they being trashed? Well, everybody's ordering in food for their whole family, and there's just garbage everywhere, and they've been there for a few days. Nobody's come and cleaned the room in between. So it's just piled high with trash. So, and they couldn't stand, and believe me, I have seen so many horror stories of pictures. It's just unbelievable the way rooms are being left these days. So they hired a bunch of teenagers from the local high school to come and clean out all the trash from the rooms before the housekeepers got to the room. They even sent some guys around if there was any furniture that needed to be moved. They had them rearrange the furniture, and then, only then, would the housekeeping team come in to clean the room, which is what they were doing.
Housekeeping.
Yes, but what a smart idea. I mean, those kids are like, I want to earn some summer money, and they're not like more mature women who take it as a personal offense that someone would leave this to them, and it's not what they're used to, and it's not what they signed up for. But true. He said their employee retention just went through the roof after that, because they showed they care.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Very true.
And it wasn't as expensive as paying the more to the
more hours. Yeah, more hours. Remember, it's a teenager that comes in and works for much less. Yeah.
Right. So in deference to Mr. Robert, I do want to, just because it is something that is right now on the edge of front of mind for everyone, because right now we marketing wise have dismissed international travel, incoming or outgoing, as either a dilution of demand to our market or as an enhancement to the market of arrival for us. And we're on a cusp of a change at this point, and whether the timing of it lands a certain way or not depends on summer versus not or whatever. But his primary article that he popped up about the COVID passport program. I mean, it's funny that it happened. He put it into the news article today because I just got my text.
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Huh?
I haven't seen that yet.
Sorry. Oh, I'll send up the link to this. I just got my confirmation that my level 2 verification with GoGetVax.com has been approved, and that gives me in my Apple a passport code to show that if I get asked what is your vaccination status, it's a verifiable platform usage that says I've been vaccinated and I'm past my quarantine of a second vaccination this way. It's a QR code that authenticates my ability, which is recognized by the TSA as well. So if I need to use something that verifies it, I don't have to show my little cardboard form thing that I have that, whatever. It's an actual verification process.
Which most of us have lost by now.
Which right by now is sitting in, here's
oh, wait,
here's
my
the link.
goodness.
Yeah. Actually, I'm gonna put both in, but this is the link of reference to this, where we already been told by EU, come on over, United States people, Americans, because you guys got vaccination. Thanks for hogging them all, whatever. Now come over and start spending tourist dollars. They, on the other side, as they start getting more vaccinations, we're going to have a reciprocation of demand to our markets as well. People that are in Europe that are looking to get over here, whether it be New York, Atlanta, or any other hub, Miami, whatever. New York, probably. I really am looking forward to what's going to happen in New York in the next 6 months, is what I'm thinking. With Broadway opening back up now, and all the things that are going on now, I think it's going to be a whole new world for New York business-wise coming up. But yeah, but this vaccination protocol, I'm happy for it, but even I have to go to the conspiracy theorists going, yeah, that's just another little number that I have to have floating around between passport codes and personal ID codes. Now I have vaccination codes. Wow, this is turning into a thing where, not to try to plagiarize against any historical aspects of this, but the mandate of identification to travel, it doesn't sit comfy, but I understand it. I appreciate that I don't want to go someplace and someone found out that everybody there didn't get vaccinated, and I'm sitting around, walking around, exposed to something. And
it's not a delicate balance. It really is.
It is. It's tough.
I think that, this is a serious problem, and it needs to be, treated seriously. And we can't just be loosey-goosey about it. I mean, if I were the governor of South Carolina, I would tell those cruise ships, you don't have to go to Florida. Come and, we'll let you have those restrictions in our port. I don't see South Carolina saying that, by the way. That's what I would do. Mm-hmm. I think it's fair. That's it. Those ships are kind of enclosed. I mean, you're really trapped on it. And
they're little incubators. The little incubators for whatever somebody has goes everywhere.
Well, so in fairness, they need to get on with their lives and with their business, and it's a business that people want to be a part of. And if that's what it takes to get it started, it's not forever, but for now, I think it's the right thing to do. And it should be that business's choice to say, I want to protect people. I want to show I'm protecting people by saying, show me your vaccination.
Well, and the cruises have a huge opportunity right now, as well as a huge risk, depending upon which way it goes. But the opportunity is that once I get on that cruise ship, if I have managed to get on a cruise ship and it is a COVID-free ship, let's say that it is, right? And it's away from harbor, it's out there on the water, and it's a sterilized environment. Now you've got a closed environment, right? COVID didn't get on, you're safe.
Right? Well, guess what? Yesterday, they found 2 people who supposedly, tested before going onto the ship, and they did have COVID. They did test positive for COVID, and they're being isolated on the ship.
And that's the other side of the coin, which is the first time there's an outbreak on one of the boats. Oh, crap.
So, let the business live. Yes. And let the people live, and let us, we just went from being totally restricted. Let us ease towards openness, the right way. And that will come one day. It's not permanent. It's,
I have to empathize on the other side. Just the example you just talked about is like, we see tragedy happening, unfortunately, in the news, because that's what news tends to focus on, is the unfortunate circumstances that life provides people, shootings and things like this. And we can be politically apolitical about it at whatever way. But being the victim on those sides is a never ending process that happened to them for tragedies and what have you. And you think about what you just said for being on the boat. You did what you thought you had to do. You tested the way you thought you did. You didn't maliciously think that I don't give a rat's ass about what the test is. I just, whatever. Taking that all aside, you did all the things you thought you could do to protect yourself and others by doing this. And it still worked out that some test, randomly inaccurate or not, false negative, boom. I'm sorry, Mr. Gray. We're yellow taping your door to your cabin. You will be given lunch at 11 o'clock, and it'll be whatever we put on a tray for you. And you're to stay in this room until we get to some place that we can let you out without going to anybody else. And anybody you do see is going to wear one little white outfit with a little mask on their face. Oh, crap. Well, do I get my money back for the cruise? No. You're lucky we don't throw you freaking overboard. I mean,
Right.
You then turn into a second-class citizen. That's the part that gets me about. And we're on the good side of it. We follow the rules. We stop at stop signs. We do all the stuff we're supposed to do. Imagine getting pulled over and being accused of a crime you didn't commit, and then going through the process of all that requires. There's a victimization to this that, innocent that you may be to that. I'm thinking of that in that circumstances, that you did what you thought you should have done, and it still worked out that you were quarantined or what have you. There's this risk edge now to travel that didn't exist before. I guess that's the part that sings in my mind about this, is that, and showing your identifications to validate your protocols are fine, but you still can be on the bad side of a conversation by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that to me is the part that I struggle with on the travel perspectives. It's not a hesitancy, but I think it's a mental phobia of, if people didn't have agoraphobia before about what fear could happen once you left your doorstep, this definitely augments that. It adds to that worry. From a hospitality side, this is the time that we should shine. This is the time for us to do what we can to realize that people are walking up to our front desk pensive. Are they going into an environment that they feel good going into? Did we share what we did correctly so that they know we do care about wearing masks inside versus outside? Or would we offer food services where, the person behind the counter is going like this, before they plop out food on a platter or whatever? What are we doing to make people feel that they're getting hospitality, they're getting service?
They should have a plan that when somebody is quarantined in their room, how are we going to make that experience as wonderful as it can be? I mean, they can think of something. I'm sure that they can think of things.
I think they can. I think there's
not feel forgotten.
Yeah, and I think you figure whenever you're treated well at a time that you are not being, from perception that you not being or can't be treated well, and you are that kind person when at a time that you're needing it the most, that resonates stronger with people than just being treated well because you're expected to be treated well. I did all my stuff. I'm one of your guests. I'm being treated kind. When you're in a detriment where you may have been quarantined and you provide that same level of empathy, Adele, I think you're right on. It's like, wow, will that burn in my brain? That will be a postmark in my life of that hotel. Those people really cared that I was just in bad circumstance. I was vindicated or whatever. Hey, I didn't have it after the next test, whatever, but they didn't treat me as a second class, or they didn't treat me like, oh, well, you really screwed up, that they treated me well. And I think that we have to be mindful that we represent everybody. We're there to provide service for everyone, even those that may be put into jeopardy or found themselves in jeopardy.
But we used the cruise ship example. So remember back last year about this time, there were cruise ships that couldn't come into dock anywhere because they wouldn't let them. You're infected and we don't want you.
Yeah, no, it's true to that. I think also too is that we from a marketing side of things, for all that's going on with the COVID aspect of all this, we have to amp up and it's terrible to say because right now, I think, this is a personal opinion of mine from right now, the reason why we're having such labor condition is that for this past year, our society has paused and realized that while we were doing things isn't the way they want to continue to do things. Companies, I don't want to go back to that company because, now with a pause, it really wasn't a great place, or I wasn't really getting compensated for what I was doing, thinking I was working towards something that they didn't even acknowledge because they furloughed me on a drop of a hat. All that sacrifice I didn't put me in a different position. It just meant that they were willing to take what I was willing to offer and no value proposition back to it again. I think that's where we're facing a lot of people. Is that people are looking, it's like, why am I working my butt off for a job, whether it's well paid or not, that I don't really like? And I think that's where we're getting this whole shifting of dynamics of our society, is that, a lot of people don't want to do what some things they were doing, and they're looking at exploring other ways of doing it, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes we have to do jobs we don't like, though, too. That's the reality of life. When I was in
Yeah.
college, man, I was a college student working 4 part-time jobs, and some of them were just crap. And quite frankly, the crappiest jobs that I've ever had in my life are also the ones that paid me the least.
Sure.
Go figure.
But we have that. But that's a striking reality in our industry too. We have had the earned striped mentality. Hey, you know what? I remember when I was you, and I didn't whip about nothing. I did what I was told, and blah blah blah. We have different generational perspectives now that don't see it that way. My best case example was when I was working. If my boss had to come help me, I had to work twice as hard, because that was an embarrassment to me that my boss had to come bail my butt out for doing work. I also had people working with me that when I started helping them, they went and took a smoke break, because they figured, hey, he's the boss. If he wants to do my job, let him. I'm going to take a break. And I'm like, dude, I'm helping you because you're not doing your job. The perception was totally in reverse of what I was doing. Generationally, we have different generations now that are in the industry going, why do I want to do this? I mean, because my dad says, I remember when I was young, I had to work my way through college. Now it's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm a farm boy from Nebraska. We got up and fed the cows because it was Tuesday. And that's just what you did on Tuesday.
I agree with you. I think it's a perception, but I think these are the deeper ramifications to, I think, what we're coming from now in our society, that I think we've done a few things. We have stopped those people that are eager to work in a safe environment by our border, what we do and so forth and what have you. We have a lot of people that aren't willing to do the minimums to take. They just want to take advantage of the opportunities that they want, and they realize that they think the chicken comes from a grocery store. Let's put it that way. They don't know what it's like to run a chicken farm and go through the process of producing the chicken that goes to the grocery store. They just know chicken's not in the grocery store. They think chicken comes from the grocery store. And I think we have a group of people that are like that right now in our society, that don't want to do what it takes to get what it is they want to enjoy. And I'm not trying to be an old codger by saying this, like, oh, you don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like. What my generations before me had a much different struggle about what they did versus what I had to do. It's a progression of society. But I think that dynamic is changing our society. We're not able to find the people that are willing to bring food to a table. We're not able to find the people that find joy in producing that food. We're not able to find the people that are willing to stand behind a desk on their feet for 8 hours a day, being pleasant to everybody that's in front of them. We're finding it harder to find those people that now are looking at ways that they want to enjoy their life differently.
And you know what? To a certain extent, maybe we need to listen to them, because maybe they're onto something, and maybe the way we lived wasn't so perfect. Maybe a little work-life balance is a good thing. And
right.
Let's face it, I mean, the way we are in this country isn't the way we are in every other country.
No.
So I think we should listen to them and accommodate them to a certain degree, but it is up to us to inspire our team. If they came to hospitality, they probably said, I liked the way I felt when I was on vacation, and I stayed in a beautiful hotel, and all the lovely people were taking care of me, and I like to be in that beautiful atmosphere around beautiful things and beautiful food. And that's the way I'm going to change my lifestyle. I'm used to being, maybe if you're like me and came from another country, although I came very little, and you have a chance, regardless of what your level of education, if you're clever, if you're willing to work hard to work your way up. And if we say, you're an important part of this team, you're the ones that are making guests happy. And if you learn everything you can to make our business successful, there are opportunities. And you can see how many general managers started as busboys or bellmen, and that can happen to you too. But it doesn't happen to everyone. It happens if you work for it. But we're here to mentor you along the way. And just the sad part about it is that a lot of front desk people, or whatever, I think you were talking about front desk before, standing up for 8 hours and being pleasant every day, they're not getting that career path. They're not getting that development.
Good
How
point.
are they meant to grow when they're in a silo?
Right. And you're right. We base sacrifice as a necessary requirement to achievement. We built this into our society infrastructure that CEOs get paid 500 times more what the average person in their company gets paid. So to get to that rarefied air of opportunity, you have to have either been the most aggressive, the most talented, or the most sacrificial. You know, how much did you do more so than somebody else that was competing for the same positions that you eventually got to? And that aggressive, only the culling of the herd, so to speak, people rise to their level of efficiency or whatever. There's a rethink on that. I think that there is a reevaluation that if you give opportunity to everyone, then everyone can benefit from the ability that everyone gets better at what they do, rather than only one can survive. Only one can achieve the next level, or a fewer number can achieve the next level. We have this culling mentality as to rising to the top. It's an actual organizational chart perspective. You know what I mean? And yet we all know teams work best when it's a shared relationship, where the best talented person at the circumstance of what's happening is the contributor that benefits, that provides the most. And they may not be the next time the same person that provides the same level, because situations change. We don't operate like that. And to your point, internationally, there is a different work ethic associated with different cultural variations to offering hospitality. Anybody that's been to Asia or anything like this, there's a group mindset that exists at a hotel in the Asian community that is not like what we have here in our culture. There is a mutual share or sink mentality with a team in the Asian culture at a hotel. From whoever you connect with, and Dean, I've talked about when we stayed at hotels in China and stuff. Mm-hmm. When you talk to anybody in that organization, you might as well be talking to the CEO of it, because even though they recognize tiers and responsibilities and leadership and everything else, the personal commitment to that person to your success as a guest is as profound as if I was talking to the GM of the hotel. They saw it as an affront to what they represented if you were not happy with something. We don't get that. It was their hotel. Yeah, they owned that. Was their thing. Yeah. And here it's like we get to just say, hey, if you don't like it, talk to my boss. I don't care.
Yeah. Sometimes you say, that policy doesn't really make sense, or I wonder why this happened. This doesn't seem to be a fair way to treat a customer. And I'm just a piano player.
But my pay grade
it wasn't me. Don't complain to me. What do I? Yeah. And I go, I'm not complaining to you as though you did something wrong. I'm just saying, I'm speaking to you as you are a representative of the company.
You have a conduit. You have a connection. Like going back to our full circle security discussion, you are the gateway into all the rest of the stuff.
But we have to. People will used to excel and grow and do so much more if they believe they're building a cathedral. The story of somebody's just feels, oh, like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just putting up a pile of bricks. And the other person next to him is doing it very carefully and doing it beautifully and says, well, what are you doing? Oh, I'm building a cathedral. Mm-hmm. And, people will come for hundreds of years afterwards to worship here and to spend the most memorable moments of their life here and to enhance, their relationships and everything. And, the building a cathedral. We
talk about that with
people's dreams come true.
When you talk to construction people, you're talking to us like, are you building it as if it was your own home, or are you building it because you want to get it done as fast as you can? Because if you're building it as your own home, I think you're going to spend a little bit more time on making sure the nails hit the right spot.
And you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to feel pride in it so much more.
Yeah, true.
So it's the leader that has to do the inspiration. Don't expect your team to be bringing their own inspiration.
So I broke my first rule of, okay, now that we're broadcasting on everything on this planet possible, I said, we got to keep it on the 2-hour thing because, there's time slots for things that run. And here we said, zing, let's go right past that and just go into 2 hours and 15 minutes. Or something like that. And which just is a testament to the quality of the conversation. And thank you very much for that. And Dean, when you talk to Carrie, please thank him as well again for having joined us. It was great to see Tim. I haven't seen him in a while. It's great to have him pop back in. Always a pleasure to have both of you. Since we're on everything, let's be very quick about Cadell. since it's right up in vein of what we just talked about, where people can find you and what it is you do, real quick.
Join me for the Hospitality Reputation Marketing Podcast, where I interview GMs and hotel owners and other amazing people about how to inspire a great culture and get great reviews. And visit my website, adelgutman.com.
And also, you will have your own page/channel on hospitalitychannel.tv for your podcast. I'm taking your podcast player and putting it right on the page, so that if there'll be the Dean page, there'll be the Adele page, well, meta search, reputation man,
and the videos too, right?
Now the videos we're actually putting on, the videos of yours we're putting into the linear one. So the hospitalitychannel.tv there's a linear TV program that's 7 days a week. It plays according to what I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. You're going to be put into that. I have little commercials that I have in there now. You're watching Hospitality TV. Cool, cutesy stuff. But then also there's going to be a page just for you and a page just for Dean, because I'm doing this because there's an app that's coming out that I'm building right now that's going out that is for hospitalitychannel.tv. So there's an app that you will be on that will be a button that says, I want to watch Adele's podcast. So go to Adele's page and there's your podcast player. And also if they just happen to watch the channel programming for that day, there's also, you'll be in the programming of that particular product as well. So you're there as well. Hospitalitychannel.tv is the free version of stuff that, because like the live show here is on our, it's called talktravel.tv, which you can go to. But if you just look for us on Roku, Google, Apple TV for Hospitality Channel, you'll find it. It's so cool. I got to tell you, it's so cool. You go on Roku and you look and it's like, there's my channel. I felt like Steve Martin out of the Jerk. The new phone books are in. The new phone books are in. I'm somebody. I have a TV. It just it was just fun to see myself there and stuff. So yeah, it was all cool. Anyway, Mr. Dean, sorry, total time jump. For those who want to know what you do and where to find you, where is it then?
You bet. If you want to learn about running meta search campaigns, Basecamp Meta, Finding Your Way, basecampmeta.com. If you need somebody to run it for you, metasearchmarketing.com. We can handle both of those. Recent articles came out, HSMAI and HEDNA, both. We had some great articles that were published through both of those organizations. We now have a training program built in with the HSMAI curriculum, and we can even help your small hotel get live on Google Meta.
Awesome. As mentioned earlier at the beginning, and also here, we are live and 5x5 everywhere. Literally, there's not a channel you can't find us on. This. If it is, I haven't found it yet.
Oculus. We need to get an Oculus channel.
But what are we going to do? The only place I can think that we should put a camera that's even worthy of putting into the 360 VR would be in Adele's office. Just let's stick a camera on her desk, because we would not want to be the person they would see on camera for that. But yes, the VR world is pretty fun. Oh, that was that we'll say that for next week. There was a whole other thing about that. Next topic on that. So find us everywhere. Also, as a reminder to everyone, we are launching as of July our Hospitality Marketing Club. That is going to be a paid-for place where it's an intermediary between needing a resource for an answer. We're going to be doing live coffee talk kind of things where you can come in and ask questions you get answers to once a week. And we're also going to be doing a tutorial once a week as a part of it. And we've really reduced down what we think the pricing model is for it now. Originally it was going to be like $250 a month. Now it's going to be $50 a month, because we just want people to have access to us, like where we talk about what things are, but that's where you learn the how. How do you do that? How do you make that? How does that actually work? And it gives you just a good resource. And then if you need us to do it for you, then we're available for hire. So it's kind of an intermediary place between all of these things. And we'll talk more about it as it gets closer to the end of the month. But in the meanwhile, for archives of this show, still not quite there yet, but you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. That will be changing also at the end of the month, where the only resource you'll have to come back to the old shows will be hospitalitychannel.tv. So please get used to that. Hospitalitychannel.tv is where you can go see all of our archive shows and podcasts for everyone. They'll be there. So right now, you can still go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. You'll see the archives of 7 years worth of shows every week, and also podcasts and all the other stuff. So with that, thank you, everyone, as always. Wonderful time.
Thank you, Lauren.
That's my therapy for the week.
Bye,
everybody. Thank you for watching us on all the channels. Bye, Melissa. Thanks for jumping in. And we'll see everyone later. Bye now.
Cheers.